All right, so strategy and planning. One thing and I'll say it throughout the course, most negotiations are won and lost before they ever start. That is, how well do you prepare for the negotiation? And I know my friends that are lawyers, they have a deposition on a Monday or have a trial. They're working all weekend preparing for that trial. So it's a lot to do with being prepared going into the negotiation. All right, so first thing, goals. Determining goals is the first step. What am I trying to achieve out of here? Should have specific goals, objectives clearly stated, goals that have a direct and indirect effect on your strategy, and then always goals, you've heard this, your goals for life should be challenging yet attainable. You want to set it, so you got to work to get it, but it's also, you don't want it to be unrealistic. So the big thing there is your goals affect your strategy. So goals always precede strategy. Now, figure out my goals, then what do I have to do to achieve my goals? All right, so the direct effects. Wishes are not goals. I mean, you can have a dream price or dream scenario you'd like to get, but that's not a goal. A goal has to be realistic. Goals are often linked to the other party's goals. And do you think you should take into consideration the other party's desires when you're setting your own?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because the compromise factor that actually gets things done is key to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I think it's good to understand your opponent, put yourself in their shoes. Why are they asking for what they're asking? And once again, I think I told you early in the class, this class is it's a psychology class, and that is understanding your opponent and then trying to work with the knowledge that you have, how to sway it or how to change it. There are no limits to what goals can be. Effective goals must be specific, concrete, and then the indirect effects, and we've talked about this, the two dilemmas, as discussed, were relationship and outcome. And a lot of times there may be a conflict between those. Pushing for a hard outcome may affect your relationship. So the more specific your goal, it's easier to understand what the other party wants, let the other party know what we want, and then do we have something that meets our goals and satisfies the other party's goals. So strategy, overall plan to achieve the goal. And so strategy is the plan. So what do we use to achieve the strategy? We use tactics, short-term, adaptive moves designed to enact or pursue broad strategy. So tactics are subordinate to strategy. What that means is come up with your strategy first and then figure out what tactics am I going to use to achieve that strategy. And then tactics are also driven by strategy. All right, so you can have your approaches to strategy. You can have unilateral, and that's pretty much you do it on your own, or you can have bilateral, consider the other. So in a distributive negotiation, are we most times going to use unilateral or bilateral? In a distributive negotiation. Unilateral. In a distributive negotiation, what is that? What's our concern for the other party? Yeah, you don't have much because it's all about winning. In a integrative negotiation, which are we going to use? Probably a bilateral, right? Because in an integrative negotiation, the purpose is to have you achieve what you want, but also let me achieve what I want. And so my notes, even in a competitive negotiation, it's not advised. It always has to know something about your opponent. So even though we tend to be unilateral in a distributive negotiation, still understanding your opponent is valuable knowledge. All right, so we kind of had this in one of the first 3 chapters, but I like these words better, the way this is laid out better. So it's called the dual concerns model. And if you look at the axis on the left, it's how important is relationship. If you look at the axis running acrossways, it's outcome. How important is the outcome? So let's go to the bottom right, and that says if that's our avoidance. That says relationships not important, outcomes not important. So what that says is if the situation is you really don't even have to negotiate, that's called an avoidance strategy, and they consider that a lose-lose just because there's no really purpose in engaging in a negotiation. If you're looking at apartments, and there's 10 of them that you can choose from, that's a situation that's very easy to walk away. You don't have to make a deal because you have tons of choices. Go to the bottom left. Relationship's not important, but outcome is important. That's competition. I gain, ignore relationship, and so that's considered a win-lose. I want to win, you're going to lose. Go to the top left, and that's collaboration, and that is I gain, you gain. It enhances relationship, and you can see that's high need for outcome, high need for relationship, and that's our integrated model. And then number 4, if we look at the far right, and it was yielding in the other, and some of you guys missed that question on the test. What does the word yield mean? To give up, right. So if you don't care about your own, but care about how the other party does, that was yielding. And same thing, that's the same word as accommodation. So in that case, many times what I've said is, it's a short term, I'm giving in short term to try to set myself up for long term, maybe get my foot in the door and have a long term relationship. But in that case, the relationship is more important than the outcome. Okay, and that's considered a lose to win. I'm going to lose the battle to try to win the war. All right, so the dual concerns model, there's 2 questions you need to ask. How much concern do I have for the outcome? How much concern do I have for the future relationship? All right, so non-engagement strategy of avoidance. If you're able to meet your own needs without negotiating, you don't need a strategy. It's simple. It may not be worth the time and effort to negotiate, and it's closely related to the desirability of alternatives. So once again, and you guys go into the job fair, if you've got 3 or 4 offers or alternatives, it puts you in a much stronger position than it does if you don't have any alternatives. You got 1 job offer. You going to negotiate yourself out of that job? I hope not. All right, so active engagement strategies. Competition is distributive win-lose. Already mentioned that. Collaboration, integrated win-win, and accommodation it's a win-lose, but it's not a win-lose. It's a lose-win. I'm going to lose and hope to win later on. Once again, relationship is paramount in that situation. Okay, so you don't need to know this for the exam, but just I think it kind of makes sense. Preparation, I do my homework, we build the relationship, I'm gathering information, use the information, actual start the bidding, we're actually trying to obtain an outcome towards the end, closing out the deal, implementing the agreement. That's just kind of a good step for the process. All right, so preparation. What are the goals? How I work with the other party? Relationship building. What are the differences? What do we have in common? Commitment towards a mutually set of beneficial outcomes. And then information gathering. What are the issues? What are the other parties' needs, etc. So think about, I sold a business with was doing about $2.5 million in revenue. So we went through that. What are the goals? So what do you think my goals were in selling the business? Goal number 1. Make enough money to retire. Didn't quite make that much, but did okay. How will I work with the other party? If I sell my business, do I have any obligation to work with that other party?
No.
If you were the other party, would you want me to work with you?
Yeah.
Would that be helpful? Yeah. And that's where the other party made a mistake in the deal, was he got it to the point that I didn't help him, and all along I was helping him. And what's my motivation to help him? Did I really have any? Happy customers. It was more about employees. I cared about my employees. I had a lot of good, loyal employees, and I wanted, and I knew we provided them a good work environment. I wanted them to have that same thing, and that's what probably my biggest disappointment after the fact was. The person committed to take care of my key employees, and it was like 2 months, and the best person that I had working for me was working for McDonald's. And I mean, it ended up hurting him because she ended up pretty much putting him out of business. But I mean, you can't save somebody against themselves. When you tell somebody you need to take care of this person because she's the best that's around here. She knows everything, and they run her off. And you know what? Why he run her off? So just, you can't be stupid. He told her that she had just had a baby. She had probably a pretty young baby. I rearranged her total schedule so she could be home with her baby. And so the guy buys me out, and the first thing he tells her is, you're going to work 2 nights a month. And she said, no, I'm not. He goes, yeah, all my managers work 2 nights a month. She said, I'm not going to work 2 nights a month. And she quit and went to work for McDonald's. So you can't, and in a lot of cases, guys, a lot of businesses that sell, and you'll deal with this, a lot of times they want the principals in that business to stay on. They will give you a contract to stay on for a period of 2 to 3 years. You guys know that? And why?
Like institutional memory, you know what the problems in the business are, or different like things that you've gone through, so they want that knowledge.
Yeah, you think you can buy a business and just step in and take over on day one with somebody who's been there? My oldest son dated a girl, and her brother owned a business. They sold it for about $70 million. It's in Jacksonville. Incredible. And I mean, I knew about it all along, the business and all. I knew they were doing well, but some big company took them out. But part of the deal was that the 2 guys that were principals would stay on for 3 to 5 years, because they wanted that time to make a transition and get somebody in to learn it, because you can't learn a business in that quick a time. So keep that in mind also. I mean, I was happy. I wouldn't have wanted to stay. As a matter of fact, I probably wouldn't have, but it's asked for a lot of times.
What happens if you sell a contract or sell a business but breach the contract and stay for 3 to 5 years?
There's going to be, these people are very sophisticated business people, so there's going to be some sort of consequences or payment that you will forfeit or pay them. So like, there's no accounting majors in here, but if you are an accounting major and you get a job with one of the big firms, they will pay for your prep course and your CPA license, but if you leave within 2 years, you have to pay that money back. Another thing, I know my son and his girlfriend, the company just moved them out to San Francisco, so if either one of them quits within 2 years, they have to pay their moving allowance back. Okay, so there's stuff tied into lawyers, and it's not a simple deal. It's a very good agreement. But for that kind of money, and oh, by the way, when you're staying that 3 to 5 years, you're making 100, 200, 300 grand. I mean, it's not like you're staying for free. You're getting paid the whole time you're there. But that's just a contingency sometimes on selling a business. In my case, the guy owned other restaurants. He pops a manager in. It shouldn't have been that hard. Or, better case scenario, which he was kind of remiss on, that place ran without me there. I mean, it was better, a little bit better when I was there, but my people knew how to run a business. So he could have done nothing and been more successful had he not come in and started screwing with it. And you guys don't have time, and I wouldn't suggest you do it now, but there's a good book out. It's called Good to Great. It's by Jim Collins. And he talks about, quantifies what successful businesses, what are the keys, and he really digs into it. And one of the things he found was that great businesses didn't have one person that they depended on. And I look at, you guys, Starbucks, right? You guys heard of know who Howard Schultz is? The founder of Starbucks. You guys know he stepped away about 6 or 7 years ago and ended up having to come back? What does that say? Is that a good thing or bad thing?
Same thing happened with Steve Jobs, like he left and then had to come back.
Exactly. So if I leave and have to come back, or if I'm not there and my business doesn't run, what have I failed to do?
Set up a system.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's kind of, you can't like trust your employees to do the job. I was always taught that the true measure of a leader is how his organization works.
When he's not there?
And so if you haven't trained your people to do it, then you haven't done your job.
If it depends on me, how much can I grow and how great can I be?
Only as much as you're willing to
Exactly. So that's the part. And I'll make this, great leaders are great teachers. And that's what that book, if you read Good to Great, it talks about the fact that these people empowered people, they hired good people, they trained them, but if you got to be there to do everything, you're not going to grow. You can't, because you can't, there's only a limit to what one person can do. All right, relationship building. Understand the difference in similarities, building commitment towards a mutually beneficial set of outcomes. I did all that, and then it was breached later, and it wasn't on me. And then information gathering. What do you need to know? What other parties? What all is involved? Information using. Once I have that information, then what can I do with it? Bidding, opening offer, give and take, and then closing the deal, building commitment, implementing agreement. So the opening offer is the best you hope to get. If I ask $5 million, are they going to go, oh no, I'll pay you 5.2? No, so the best you hope to get is your opening offer. And chances are you're not going to get that, so what are we going to do with our opening offer? We're going to inflate it, right? We're going to ask for more than what the target. Remember the target points where we hope to get, where we hope to conclude negotiations. So to involve that concession part of it, we always want to ask for more than what we expect to get. So the opening offer is the best deal you hope to get, although most people do not expect to get their asking price, so they build in a cushion. Good distributed bargainers will build in that cushion so you can give up. So if I want $4 million and my opening offer is $5 million, am I really giving up anything when I make concessions? Not really. I mean, if I get 4, I'm going to be happy. So if we go from 5 all the way down to 4, that's what I wanted to get. So it's good to be able to give up something that you don't really need or want. Now, the more you can get, better. But if 4 is what I want, then anything I give up to get to 4, really, I'm not giving up that much. But psychologically, hey, I got them down from 5 to 4. And guys, any car dealership in America, they're going to come down some. They've got it built in. Promise you. All right, so define the issues, assemble the issues, and defining the bargaining mix. And so we talked about bargaining mix in one of the other chapters. A list of issues, and define your interests. We talked about those. Are they substantive, meaning are they about the outcome? Are they process? How are we going to get from A to Z? And are they relationship? And why do you want what you want? So a lot of success in a negotiation, and I already said this happens before it ever begins. Planning, very key. Define the issues. Some negotiations are a single issue, such as the price. Others more be, such as selling a business. Okay, so what about when I sold my business? What about the inventory that I had?
Should be included.
Okay. Question, is it included?
That's a part of the contract, the selling agreement.
As part of the bargaining mix?
Yeah.
So it's negotiable, right? Could I include it and say, okay, your price is going to be all inclusive? Yeah. But could I also say, no, this is for the business and the inventory is separate? Yeah, whatever you get somebody to agree to. Same thing with a house. The curtains, the refrigerator. You can either do it all inclusive, or you can say no. Those will be. I'll be willing to sell those, but those are separate. Which many people you're not going to take the curtains down, but everything's negotiable. So I sold my inventory separate, and so what we did on the day that we closed the store, closed the deal, it was on July 3rd. I had my manager and one of his managers do an inventory that day, at that minute. And basically he was then supposed to write me a check, and then he tried to hold that check from me because he wasn't happy about something with the other deal. And I told him, I said, you can do that if you want to, but you have no legal case because that whole deal was another deal. The inventory is a whole separate deal. And he checked with his lawyer, and he ended up mailing me the check because that was not part of the original deal. And then also selling something. What about repairs? If there's any repairs that have to be made, that's a big contention when people are buying a house. Are you responsible for doing repairs?
It depends.
It's negotiable, right? So what happens? What realtors encourage, I know around here, is for an inspection to be done, and then the person that's selling the house to fix if it's like some minor stuff. To fix it, but usually the person that's buying the house pays for the inspection. So basically it's like an insurance policy on your part. You're paying this person to inspect the home to make sure there's nothing major done. And in that case, if there's something major and the person selling the house says, look, I'm not going to fix that, then you got a decision to make. And I sold a condo in Fort Walton Beach, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. Something had been in my family for a while, and we gave the people a really good price, and they had an inspection, and they came back with a list of stuff, and we just said, look, it's as is. You know, you're getting a good price. You want it. You know what's wrong now. You know how much you're going to have to spend to fix it. You either take it or you don't, and they ended up taking it. And so, because they knew the price we gave them was really good. It was one of those situations where could we have got more? Yeah, but is timing and time value of money worth something at some point too? Yeah, absolutely. And especially if you have a home that's not lived in, it starts deteriorating. You're still paying the taxes, the insurance, the carrying cost on it. So at some point, maybe lower your price. Any house will sell quickly if it's priced right. Yeah. But better scenario, get in a situation where you don't have to buy or sell. Because if you can do that, that's when you make money. Define the issues and then define the bargaining mix. Okay, define resistance point. At what point should I say no deal is better than a bad deal? You should know that going into the negotiation. I should have a walkaway point go. I can't get at least this, deal's off. Define your alternatives. What other possibilities exist to meet your needs? Party with the best alternatives usually are in position of strength. So if I'm selling my business to this guy, what alternatives? If you're selling a franchise, what's your best way to sell that? Who would you sell it to?
Somebody who already owns a franchise.
Somebody who owns a franchise. Why?
Because they have experience.
And they're approved. The big thing is they're approved. That they don't have to go through. If you are a franchisee, you have to be approved by the corporation to run that franchise. So a existing franchisee is pre-approved. I kind of, and you would really want one in the area, but the guy that was really closer to me also sold his stores to the guy that took me out, so the guy ended up buying pretty much all of South Arkansas. So really, I didn't have a whole lot of other people. I probably could have gone deeper out of the company, but if you're in Kansas, do you want to be owning 2 little stores in South Arkansas? Nah, that's not a good business model. You got to be, it needs to be geographically accessible. All right, know your limits and alternatives, set your objectives, which is your targets, your opening bid, where am I going to start? And then, once again, targets the outcome we realistically expect to get, and the opening is the best that we hope to achieve. And then assess the constituents and the social context, or any kind of environmental things, or we call them intangibles that we need to consider. So, my notes, if you focus too much on the other party, you may set your goals based on a reaction to them instead of your own goals. So my main goals need to be paramount. But reactive strategies can often cause anxiety and make the other party defensive and flexible. So that's when I think tension arrives, is when people react without thinking. So guys, it's okay at some time, if you're in a deal, to just say, I need some time. Walk away. And I've got an article by, I'll try to find it, by Karras, who's the guy that does all the seminars, and he talks about how important patience is in a negotiating. What's it say if you're in a big hurry to get something done?
Desperate.
Yeah, you want out. And what does that mean?
The buyer can take advantage.
Exactly. That means if that guy knew I had to sell my business and get out of there, price comes down. Same thing if when I told you a story about selling the house I had here in town. If that real estate agent had known I had already sold my house, then all of a sudden the house I'm bidding on, probably the price would have gone up, it wouldn't have come down anymore. Because at that point, I got to have somewhere to live. So you always want to try to make it so you don't have to buy or sell. And I think when you're really in a rush to get things done, then it signals that, yeah, I really want out. And if you really want out, it drives the price down. All right, already mentioned this, target specific but attainable, positive thinking about your own objectives, how to consider several issues, and understanding of the trade-offs and throwaways. And so my notes on number 2, focusing too much on the other party's goals may prompt a reactionary strategy, which make your opponent act threatened or defensively. Most negotiations are a mixture of bargaining of objectives, so what's the best way to achieve all objectives? And then ties in throwaways. What's in there that I really don't care about? What can I throw in that really doesn't matter? Here's a good question too, and kind of said in the notes, it says which employees to keep. One of the things that the guy put in the contract when I sold my business, he said, Mr. Garner agrees not to employ any of his former employees for a period of 2 years. So, should I sign that? I still have one store. I sold 2 and I still kept 1. So he wanted me to sign something saying I wouldn't hire any of my former employees for a period of 2 years.
Did you sign it?
Okay, I signed it, but guess what? It's not enforceable. My lawyer told me that. Okay? Why do you pay a lawyer? Why? Okay, can you and I make an agreement on where Atish works?
No, but I feel like we could agree on not hiring them.
But isn't that restricting his choice?
Okay.
Right, not enforceable. And now, are there situations where you can put that in? Yes, if there's proprietary information, if there's something, and you guys heard of non-compete?
Yeah.
And so you can make employees sign a non-compete saying that if you leave here, you can't do business with any of our former customers for a period of 2 years because you have proprietary knowledge. There's certain details that have to line out for them to be able to make you to sign a non-compete, but you and I can't make a deal that says where any of these other people can work. It's not fair to any of these other people. So what ended up happening? One of my former employees came to me and said, look, I hate this guy, will you hire me? And I hired him. And that guy he did not like it a bit. But my first thought is, you're the one that ran him off. If he was happy, he wouldn't have left you in the first place. And, oh, by the way, we discussed this, that it's not enforceable. And he threatened to sue me once again, talked to his lawyer and figured out he couldn't. So, end up employing the guy. So, a lot of things that are deeper than, and guys, it was a learning experience for me. And I still can't tell you if I made a real good deal or not. I don't know. Because I couldn't find anybody that had sold one, what it was worth. How do you value that? It's hard, especially when there's not a lot of information. This is in the 90s. There's no internet or, just started the internet. So it was really very, very hard to get information on kind of what a price is. And it's a challenge. All right, so getting ready, implementing the strategy, the planning process, analyze the other party. What do they want? How can I present my case and refute their arguments, present the issues to the other parties, and does the other party have viable alternatives? And that's very important. Do I know what their alternatives are? What happens if I know they've got alternatives?
You have less power.
Exactly. If you guys are interviewing for a job and you know they need 3 people and you know they're interviewing 10 people, are you going to negotiate hard over pricing that deal? I mean, unless you know you're really good, you know you're their top candidate. But if there's 10 people, and that's guys, that's a challenge of you guys coming out of here and going to these job fairs. How many people are in that room interviewing for jobs?
Like at a time?
What's that?
At a time? Or total?
No, I mean, just saying is, are there a lot of people competing for jobs? Yeah. So why are you that special? And are you that special? Do you have a skill set at an entry level that company wants more than they want anybody else? So why is it easier to get a job when you have a job?
You don't do that.
Do I have an alternative built in? Yeah. What's the alternative? I already got a job. Okay, so for you to hire me away, for you to get me away, you're going to have to pay me more. And that's what's happened, especially now that people go out and learn a skill set, and then you sell that to the highest bidder. And that's why your individual skill set that you guys learn, that's why it's so important. Because you can sell that. And people, if you have a good skill set, are people going to be willing to pay for it? Sure. If you can prove that you're better than the other people, but if these people got to have 4 people and there's 40 applicants, you're one of 40. What are your odds? Just figure it out mathematically. 1 in 10, 10% chance of getting the job. Okay? Not good. All right, so having viable alternatives is a position of strength. It allows you to set higher objectives, push harder for your position. So if I have alternatives, I can push harder because I have something to fall back on. But you got to be willing to take those alternatives if you start pushing. And then if you have a job you really like, someone approaches you, you can ask for more than you would if you didn't have a job. Because if you don't have a job, I've got to have a job. Oh, let me tell you a story. I was thinking about this. I had the director out at Flagler asked me if I would meet with a friend of his that had just had an interview. And I said, absolutely. So the person was interviewing for a bookkeeping job, and she had already had the first interview. And that, I told her I wish she had come to me before she had the first interview. So the question she got asked in the first interview was, what salary are you looking for? What's our answer?
What do you offer?
7 figures.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to throw out a number there? You can, but if you throw out that number, you need to have done your homework. And so what she told me is she said, I told them 30 to 35. And I said, oh man, you probably just cost yourself about $5,000. Okay? What do you think and I'm just going, I mean, my wife's a bookkeeper and I know what she makes. What do you think an average, a good bookkeeper is worth to a company?
50,000 at least.
I'd say low end 35 to 40. Instead of 30 to 35, I would set my low end at 35 and to 40. So then what we were doing was trying to figure out a strategy to get to that 35 instead of the 30. Okay, going back, hey, I've done a little research and I was, you know what, I think that 30 to 35, I sold myself a little short, and you're very apologetic when doing that, but you want to stay out of that situation. When you say 30 to 35, what have you done? You've capped the most you're going to get at 35. Because are they going to say, oh, okay, we'll pay you 40? What's that company's goal?
Pay the least they can.
Make money. Exactly. So be careful about boxing yourself in. And then, well, what pay range do you guys normally pay in? Well, it's commensurate with experience. Well, based on my experience, what would that be? Always try to get them to throw out that first number because she just really limited herself by throwing out that number.
I think like New York State, they like outlawed that question, like you can't ask it in interviews because the determinative is like discriminatory or like some nonsense like that.
It wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, I'm not a fan of that question, to be honest. Like, whenever I get in an interview, I'm just like, come on.
I'm not either, but if you're hiring people for your company, would you want to ask that question?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying, I mean, from their perspective, it's a good question, but like, it's kind of loaded, so.
I mean, I ask people that question too a lot.
You got to understand their goal, and good companies want to take care of their people, but they also want to make money. So it's like an HR person's dream. Yeah, I'll take $30,000. Well, what if they were willing to pay 45? Then you left money on the table. So all I'm trying to do is get you to think, okay? And don't you constrain yourself when you throw out that answer because you're not going to get more than 35. So and then even if I had no clue, then I would throw out a little higher, 45 to 50. Okay, well, generally we only pay 40. Is that still going to work for you? But you don't want to lowball, unless, what's the one reason you might lowball and do that?
There's specific terms, sorry. It's like when you get other things like bonuses or there's a term.
Okay, there could be other stuff built in, so you'll take a lower salary. If you had to have that job, if you needed that job, and that's the only one, and you've been looking for 6 months, and if you don't get a job in the next little while, financially you're going to start being on hardship, I might take it at the low end. Right, get your foot in the door and get something. And then, what do? Hopefully, as you get there and prove yourself, then hopefully you can climb up. And that's another good thing to look for when you guys are interviewing. Are there companies that reward good people? And if there are, that's who I want to work for. That's who I wanted to work for. If you're average, you may not want to work for them, but if you're good, and okay, fine, I'll start with 40, even though I had an offer of 43, because I see more potential here. I see more room. If I'm good, if I grow, then I got more top-end potential. All right, so questions. Have you negotiated with them in the past? What is their reputation? And preparing for your opponent can be as important as preparing for the issues. What does that mean?
Basically, to know the guy. Like, if you're negotiating stuff with someone, like I talked to, like, one person I was thinking about doing having supplies. I sat down with them like, over lunch and some drinks. That actually, if you have, like, a good atmosphere and you, like, know their personality, you can adapt to that and make them more flexible towards what you want.
What about if you know their history? My lawyers tell me, if you're a defense lawyer, there's lawyers that represent insurance companies, and there's PI, personal injury lawyers, and those people are crossing paths at the same time, because the same guys represent the insurance companies. That's their biggest client. The same guys are personal injury guys that sue the insurance companies. So they tell me that knowing your opponent has a lot to do with your strategy. If you know that person is fair, and you know that person is really looking out to try to get a deal done, that's going to be better than dealing with somebody that you know is a jerk, or I don't know Morgan & Morgan personally, but I would guess that you would not want to be negotiating against them based on what they spend in advertising. I would imagine they're pretty tough. So that's who you're against may be as important as the issues. And a lot of that goes to reputation. We'll do a whole chapter on like your reputation, because especially if you're in a business that has a lot of repeat stuff, your reputation is key. All right, so what information do we need? Once again, a slide like this, there's probably not a test question on there. Okay, look at it. It's just a bunch of stuff. All right, so resource, issues and bargaining mix, interest and needs, walkaway points, targets and opening bids, social structure, reputation and style, strategy and tactics. So that's kind of just an overview of everything we've already been over. All right, so then what's the protocol? And is this important? Is the process important? Yeah, I think it can be. So what's the agenda? Who will be there? Where it occurs important? Where would you rather it be?
Your office.
In your office. Why?
Your turf.
Yeah, home field. Exactly. What's the time period? Is that important? Why is time important?
Shows you're not desperate if you're jumping to make a deal.
Yep.
Time might affect like the constraints of the negotiation.
Yeah. What if there's a deadline? Does that matter then? Yeah. In a lot of the trials, there's a trial date set, and a lot of times, you know when that case will settle? The night before trial starts. Like a Sunday night at 9 o'clock. I've got lawyer buddies that tell me they're prepared to go to trial on Monday morning, and at 9 o'clock that night they'll settle it. Why? They don't want to go to trial. Neither party really in a negotiation. If you're a lawyer, do you want to go to trial? Why?
It's so expensive.
Time. Your time. Are you going to get compensated for your time? If you make the deal, are you still going to get paid a percentage? Yeah. And when you go to trial, it's a gamble. So if both parties can make the deal, boom, split. And I told you, it's very rare, a very small percentage of cases that go to court.
I was thinking about the preparation thing, like the O.J. Simpson trial, like kind of the infamous thing was at the very beginning. They said, the defense, are you rated? And they say, you are. And the prosecutor thought they were going to try and delay or something. So it was like, boom, prosecution, you're on. And she wasn't ready for that. So that was like a big, and that's what that's what the defense said, for the O.J. Simpson trial, took the prosecution off their game because they were prepped and ready to go, even though the prosecution didn't think they weren't.
Right.
Just threw off their competition.
I mean, how could you make that assumption?
Right.
I mean, that's really dumb to do that. But once again, great strategy from the other people. And, there was all kinds of books been written about the defense team that O.J. had and how effective they were. And think about it, when you saw what they had to work with, they really did a pretty amazing job, I think. All right, what if the negotiation fails? How do we keep track of, and how do we know whether we have a good agreement? Well, you should know that based on what were my goals going in. And if I got close to them, then I can say probably I got a good agreement. All right, so summing it up, planning is the most important part of any negotiation. It is do your homework. Even as simple as buying a car, with the internet now, there's so much information out. Check other markets, just, do your homework. But a lot of it depends on how much time you have. There's times when, I've not made great deals just because if I've got to have, you guys have to have a car to get to work and it's Friday and I got a job on Monday, are you going to have time to do a lot of homework? No, not at all. Once again, what's the moral? Try to keep it so that you're in a position that you don't have to do something. When you get in that position, that's when you make the worst deals. So always want to try to stay on time on your side and alternatives. Have options. All right, that's it.